My name is Rabbi Yoshua Fass, co-founder and executive director of Nefesh. I'd like to thank our cherished partners at the JNF, the Jewish National Fund USA, who have made this series possible along with many other incredible joint projects. It is my honor to present Ambassador Michael Oren. Mr. Oren is not just a former Israel ambassador to the US, a deputy minister of Israel, a Princeton and Columbia University educated historian and professor, a prominent author, a gold-winning athlete in the Maccabiah Games, and the proud father of 3 children. He is also a former lone soldier. Ambassador Oren served as an officer in the Paratrooper Corps in the Lebanon War, a liaison with the US 6th Fleet during the Gulf War, and an IDF spokesman during both the Second Lebanon War and the 2009 operation in Gaza. From everything in this illustrious list, I'm perhaps most proud to introduce Michael Oren as a North American Oleh, as an immigrant to Israel who left everything behind to be part of building and defending the greatest Jewish miracle of our times, the State of Israel. Ambassador Oren has honored us by addressing our Olim at our momentous arrival celebrations held each year, welcoming plane loads of new Olim. He has spoken at our Yom HaZikaron ceremony as a lone soldier who has seen battle and who understands the price we have paid and continue to pay to live in the only Jewish country in the world. And he has honored us with his presence and participation in other significant Aliyah events throughout the years. Ambassador Oren is part of our joint vision, representing what we hold so dear, that each and every Oleh that we're privileged to help bring to Israel is an investment, is a gift to Israel, with ongoing return on so many levels. In just 18 years, Chai years, Nefesh has infused Israel with over 60,000 Olim, 7,000 lone soldiers, 8,000 Olim to Israel's north and south, hundreds of artists, educators, and entrepreneurs, and over 600 physicians who are our medical heroes on the front lines in every hospital and clinic throughout Israel. The Forward named Ambassador Oren as one of the top 5 most influential Jews in America. The Jerusalem Post listed him as one of the 10 most influential Jews worldwide. I would humbly add another category and list him as one of the most influential North American Olim, representing the incredible potential that lies in each and every Oleh that brings his or her handprint to Israel. Ambassador Oren, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you, Rabbi Fass. Thank you so much for that deeply touching introduction. Thank you to my friends at JNF, Russell Robinson, Yosef Kane, that extraordinary staff. I am especially delighted and honored to be speaking for Nefesh. You know, there are 5 or 6 words you never think you're going to say in life. So here they are. 41 years ago, when I made Aliyah, 41 years ago, last month, I made an Aliyah. I stood at the top of a stairway leading off an El Al plane. Those days they had stairways going off of El Al planes. With a backpack on my back, in the driving rain, looking out at the lights of Tel Aviv, all 3 of them, and walked down those steps, kissed the runway as one did, and made Aliyah. I made Aliyah because at that moment I felt I was fulfilling a vision not of 2,000 years, but of 3,000 and 4,000 years. A vision of the ingathering of the Jewish people into our ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. I was realizing a dream that my great-grandparents could not even envision, living in the shtetls of Eastern Europe, fleeing the pogroms. It was with a tremendous sense of historical duty and spiritual richness that I stepped off that stairway with the backpack into the rain and tried to meet a taxi cab that didn't meet me at the airport, that I had to somehow find my way to Jerusalem, to an absorption center where I arrived about 2 or 3 in the morning and nobody met me there. And next day received the benefits of a new Oleh in the 1970s, which included a plastic bucket, a rubber squeegee, a sponge mattress on which nobody could ever sleep, along with a sponge pillow. And that was what making Aliyah was like 41 years ago. Aliyah is the essence of Zionism, and it goes to the core of Jewish identity. It is the way that the Jewish people fulfill our covenant with God, and it begins really it is coterminous with the beginning of the Jewish story, when God says to Abraham, "Lech lecha," pick up from your family, pick up from the ways and cultures and people you know, and go to a land that I will show you. And so much of our history throughout the Torah, throughout the Tanakh, is a story of a people trying to get back to their land and trying to establish an independent polity and maintain it and defend it in that land. And it was only through exile, banishment, defeat in battle that we're able to lose that polity and embark on a 2,000-year-long exile. But even during that period, significant aliyot, significant waves of Jewish immigration took place, going back to the land of Israel, often under the most deleterious situations, dangerous circumstances. Jews took their lives in their hands to get back here during the Middle Ages and through the Renaissance, such that by the beginning of the modern era in 1882, there were 60,000 Jews living in what we call the old Yeshuv, what was then called Palestine. Jews were the largest single minority group in Jerusalem, largest group, ethnic group in Jerusalem, 60,000 people. And in 1882, there were large-scale pogroms in Russia, and that spurred the beginning of the Zionist movement. The organizations like Bilu picked up and left, Chovevei Zion picked up and left, and established the first colonies here with the support of Jewish philanthropists in Europe, the Rothschilds and others, and mostly viticulture, growing wine, and altogether, probably about 20,000 people, not more. And the first Aliyah was concluded in 1903 with another wave of pogroms in Kishinev in southern Russia, another wave, and that continued to 1916 when World War I precipitated yet another wave, and then pogroms in the 1920s in Poland, another wave. About 4 or 5 aliyot before the greatest Aliyah, which is really the third, 1933, the rise of Nazi Germany, when some 300,000 Jews fled from Europe, fled from Nazi Europe, and came to what was then known as Palestine, and really transformed the economy here and laid the groundstones, or the bedrock, the foundations of a modern Israeli state, including the institutions which we know today. The British tried to stem Aliyah with the horrendous white paper of 1939. But even then, Jews tried to break through the British blockade, what they called Aliyah Bet, throughout the pre-state period, often taking on British forces in order to reach home. Such that by the eve of Israel's independence in 1948, there were 600,000 Jews here, not large by contemporary standards, about the size of the population of Boston, for those of you from Boston who are living and listening to us. But that represented a tremendous portion of the remains of European Jewry and a tremendous wellspring of talent and energy. A country that comes into being without natural resources, surrounded by adversaries, without allies in the world, which then creates a democracy, defends that democracy, and over the course of the next decade, expands its population nearly tenfold. There's really been nothing like it in modern history, tenfold through Aliyah. Aliyah mostly from Middle Eastern countries, from North Africa, followed in the early 1960s, such as the eve of the Six-Day War, about 2.5 to 3 million Jews living in this country. It's an extraordinary expansion of the Jewish presence in this country, almost all from immigration. Yes, we have a very high natural birth rate, but expansion like that can only be through immigration. During my own period here, I witnessed the miracle of Aliyah, and I can't stress that word enough, miracle, to see tens and tens of thousands of Jews from Ethiopia being airlifted through 2 major operations, Operation Moses and Solomon in the 1980s. When I was ambassador, I would always appear before African American groups and remind them that Israel is the only largely Caucasian Western style government that ever airlifted an entire African population to safety. It was extraordinary to watch that, imagine. And then in 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of Soviet communism, nearly 1 million Jews from the former Soviet bloc making Aliyah. Now, Israel in 1989 had a population of about 7 million people. Added to that were another million people. Now, you could do the math and find out what this would be like in the United States. It would be equivalent of tens and tens of millions of people moving to the United States or any other country. And yet Israel did it. An amazingly successful Aliyah that transformed the face of this country and made Israel the not so minor superpower that it is today. Because the fact of the matter is, Aliyah is not just the ideal of Zionism. It's not just the fulfillment of the dream of ingathering the exiles for which we pray 3 times a day. It is also Israeli interest. In my official capacities, I had extensive exposure to Israeli high tech, the startup nation. I talk about miracles, and I would visit startups around the country. In almost every startup, I saw the great secret. The secret, we always talk about the role of the military in the Israeli innovative miracle, but I will tell you, it is the historic fusion of Israeli entrepreneurship with Russian Jewish ingenuity. You go into any of these labs, and you will see the Russians who came here in the 80s and the 90s, often taking their entire factories and laboratories with them, much as the Germans did. The German Jews did in the 1930s and transformed this country. I lived in outside of Beersheba in the 1980s. It was a backwater, a dusty backwater. It was defeated. You should see Beersheba today. You see cities like Ashkelon and Ashdod today that have been just infused with vitality and creativity as a result of these aliyot. So it is certainly an Israeli interest. That's also an Israeli strategic interest. Rabbi Fass mentioned that I was a lone soldier back in the 1970s, didn't get any rights. We didn't get socks, we didn't get underwear, we didn't get food, basically nothing. And today there are some 7,500 lone soldiers serving in the IDF. That's the equivalent of a brigade for the Israeli army. They serve disproportionately in elite combat units. They fall disproportionately in our battles. I've had to go to too many funerals and shivot for lone soldiers who have fallen and given their lives for this country. But supporting these lone soldiers, making their service as bearable as possible, is very difficult without a family, is certainly one of the, I think, the most exalted activities which Nefesh does to support these lone soldiers from the United States and elsewhere. Skip ahead 41 years, and when I have my very significant other, Leslie, made Aliyah, and she made Aliyah through Nefesh B'Nefesh. And I got to tell you this, with a bit of a grin on my face here, that when I went through the process with Leslie, and I saw that she accomplished literally with 1 hour what it took me back in the 1970s 2 years to do, and I'm not exaggerating, 2 years. In 1 hour, they have an 8-step program. You go through everything. You get your Teudat Zehut, your identity card. You get everything within 1 hour. And the way it was done with this dedicated staff, with everyone there to help you all the way. If you have questions, if you have difficulties, they're there to help. You can always pick up the phone any day of the week, except for Shabbat, to Nefesh B'Nefesh. They'd always be there to help. And frankly, I looked at these 8 steps. I looked at the 1 hour program, and I had to cry because it was that extraordinary to see her go through that. Just a remarkable, I don't want to belabor the term, but a remarkable process in Nefesh B'Nefesh. One of my favorite chapters and verses from the Torah is Numbers 32:6. And Numbers 32:6 is a controversial parasha. And it talks about how the tribes of Gad and Reuven did not want to cross the Jordan with the other 10 tribes and fight all those enemies in order to take possession of our land. And Moses has some tough words with them. But they reach a compromise and an understanding. That is, okay, Gad and Reuben will support militarily the other 10 tribes as they battle their way and claim our territory. And then they'll go back to living what was then considered the diaspora. And I think that is a model for the way that those of you in JNF and elsewhere who support Nefesh B'Nefesh do that. You are fulfilling a mitzvah by helping others to fulfill what I regard as one of the paramount mitzvot of the Jewish people and the fulfillment of our historic vision and our destiny. And for that, as a former Ole, irrespective of whatever positions I held, just as a former Ole, I want to thank you. Toda Rabah, Mekerev Lev, from the bottom of my heart, for everything you do for Nefesh B'Nefesh, for everything you do for the state of Israel by revitalizing and infusing this country with new energy, new talent all the time, particularly from North America, where these people, these Olim, have left behind, in many cases, lives that have been sort of financially probably much more secure, certainly physically more secure, to come here and to realize the vision of Zionism and of our people for 4,000 years. Toda Rabah. Thank you very much.